listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever or wherever you're listening to the Straight to Video podcast. Means a lot that you're out there and checking out the show. On today's episode, I had the great pleasure of talking to a true rock and roll institution for many reasons because of his incredibly long and varied career. Today, I get to welcome Ricky Warwick to the show, and it was a more than splendid chat which we got to have. Most guests I could start off with saying you will most likely know them from such and such, but with Ricky, his professional music career, which is now into its fourth decade, I believe, just continues to go from strength to strength. Originally landing a role as rhythm guitarist for New Model Army, he would go on to form the monstrous hard rock band The Almighty, who had a string of hits in the 1990s and still have this incredibly devoted fan base to this day. Ricky would later step up and become the frontman for the reformed Thin Lizzy, and later the quality offspring of that band in the form of Blackstar Riders, who have had a string of hit albums and hugely successful tours. Now, outside of all this, Ricky continues to release great solo albums full of inspirational and heartfelt songs, no better showcase than on his latest release, When Life Was Hard and Fast, which is out now. Before we head into this fun talk, please spare a few minutes to check out Dead Skull Coffee over at deadskullcoffee.co.uk, where you can grab a 15% discount on their ground and full bean coffee by adding the promo code STV to your order on checkout. Dead Skull Coffee are a true independent business with a great rock and roll attitude, and I really appreciate them being supporters and working alongside this show. So that's deadskullcoffee.co.uk and add STV on checkout for your discount as a thank you for listening to this show. If you want to find out more about Ricky Warwick, his new album When Life Was Hard and Fast, or any of his upcoming tour plans as we begin to get back to normal, then you can find him at rickywarwick.com, and links to all his social media platforms are there too. Now, Ricky spoke to us from his home out in California and had some great stories to share, all from his childhood and the early days of The Almighty, along with feelings about stepping up and singing the songs of his hero Phil Lynott of Thin Lizzy. I really had a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoy it too. So here's my straight to video talk with Ricky Warwick.
What's going on?
I'm pretty good, man. How's things over there?
Yeah, things are good. In California, things are very good indeed, because it's amazing when over 70% of the population gets vaccinated, suddenly the virus goes away. It's funny how that works, right? So everything's open. We're good. Everything's pretty much open here. We've got over 70% of the population vaccinated. Things are getting back to normal in California, which is lovely.
Superb, man. Thank you ever so much for doing this.
Of course, buddy. Thank you for having me. You're more than welcome.
I've had a couple of your friends on the show. Damon Johnson was on a few months ago, and Toby Jepson. He did a great interview with you for his podcast a while ago. That was awesome.
Yeah, Toby was great. Yeah, Toby and I have been mates for years, so that was lovely. Sort of just talking to him as a mate was great,
He's got so much enthusiasm. He's just so infectious. I'd never met him before, and straight away it was like, this is great.
He's a very positive human being. He's a good guy, Toby.
I'm coming to you from just outside Nottingham. I don't know when the last time you was there. Probably a Rock City gig or something.
One of my favourite places in the world, Nottingham is. It's great. We love it there. It's funny whenever we, I'll just tell you, Rob, whenever we're on tour, if we've got a few days off between shows or festivals or something, usually, they'll stick you in a hotel in London. We always go to Nottingham because of the Indian, and just we have mates there, and we always we'll have a few days off in Nottingham.
Yeah, it's a good place. It's always been a rock town.
Absolutely.
So where are you now on the West Coast? Are you Hollywood area or just outside? Or?
I'm Beverly Hills.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep.
How long have you been out there for?
Man, 17 years.
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, this is the longest I've lived anywhere in my life, by quite some way. Yeah, 17 years I've been here.
Would you ever imagine the kid who grew up in Ireland and Scotland would be living and working in the USA?
I certainly dreamed about it when I was a kid. You never imagine that it'll become reality. You hope it will, and you dream about it. I always wanted to live in America when I was a kid,
What was that, through films and TV shows? Or?
Yeah, films and westerns and, all the great detective like Starsky and Hutch and Rockford Files that we used to get when I was a kid. I was always obsessed with American culture and the music too,
I mean, everything revolved around those TV shows on a Saturday evening or whenever there was from the 70s and 80s. It was all larger than life.
Absolutely. Just
the best.
Yeah, it was. It was like a different planet,
How has your relationship with the States changed over the years? Because you've had various touring experiences over there from, I think, was it originally with New Model Army as their rhythm guitarist, and then club shows with the Almighty, and obviously now being out there, Blackstar Riders, and a dad too. So how has your perception of America changed?
It's home, and I'm settled here, and obviously my youngest daughter was born here and goes to school here and is very California because that's all she's ever known. So it just becomes you stop sort of thinking about it as, oh my God, I'm living in Los Angeles, isn't this great? It just becomes this is where I live and this is where I'm from right now. It becomes the norm. But I mean, I never really take it for granted. I mean, the weather's amazing. The opportunities for kids growing up here is great. Sadly, the politics that have gone the last few years, I haven't felt very comfortable with it all. And I think it's a great shame what's happening right now in the United States of America regarding democracy and racism. And sadly, where they're going seems to be a lot of people want to drag the country backwards and seem hell-bent in doing that. And that doesn't sit good with me. And that's the one thing that would make me think about leaving here if that was to progressively get worse.
Everything's so unpredictable, how things change. It flips straight away.
The world is right now, and I just think it's really a lot of people now, we're seeing a lot of people's true colors, and some of those colors aren't very good, with what people are saying and what they're doing and what they're thinking. And it's like we've learned nothing. It's like we've almost learned nothing throughout history. It's just really we've got so much technology at our disposal now. We've come through so much as a species, but yet here we are still hell-bent on division and systemic racism and hatred and bigotry. And it's just like, oh man, when are we going to fucking learn?
I think technology emphasizes it as well.
It does. It makes everything accessible, and yeah.
You don't want to say shut people down because everyone's allowed to have a voice. But all of a sudden they've got this massive voice.
Yeah, and there's a lot of keyboard warriors out there, they'll just want to get attention. It's the devil's keyboard, right? That's what it really is. But again, good and bad things about the internet. What would this lockdown been like the last year without the internet? It's made it incredibly bearable to keep in touch with loved ones.
100%.
That you can't be with, I mean, in fact, we're doing this right now. This is amazing,
Obviously, I would imagine you made quite a few friends in the US over the past few decades. Once you moved out there, was you able to reconnect with a lot of people?
Yeah, it was really nice actually, Rob. But the first sort of week I was here, as soon as I sort of got in, Billy Morrison, who folks know Billy from his time playing the Cult and Stimulator, and I was in the band Circus the album. I was at his house writing songs, and Billy Duffy from the Cult's out here. I've known Billy for years this way. So they're like, no, come on, let's go get a coffee. And so I've quite a few expats out here, that they're living here that I hooked up with. Vivian Campbell from Def Leppard was out here already. So that was great. So it wasn't like I was coming out and I didn't know anybody. I actually knew quite a few people out here.
Did I hear that in the early days of the Almighty, Ricky Rackman brought you out to play the Cat House?
Yeah, I think we were the first European band to ever play the Cat House.
Wow. What year would that have been?
Yeah, it was way back in 1990, which was just amazing.
Holy shit.
Right on the first record, right when we put the first record out, Ricky Rackman brought us over. Ricky Rackman and Axl Rose. Those were the two guys who were instrumental in bringing us over. Axl had got a copy of, we did a limited edition clear vinyl, 1,000-only pressing of the demos for the first album. And Axl got his hands on one of them and sent a note to our management company about how much he was blown away by it, and I guess talked to Ricky Rackman, and the next thing, we're on a plane out to LA to play the famous Cat House.
Holy shit. I expected you just be on this club tour over there and it just kind of coincided.
No, it was literally a one-off. Yeah, it was literally a one-off. We obviously did a bunch of promo while we were out here, but it was it was amazing. It was packed, and I guess all the LA bands at that time were at the gig, and it was just great. It was really good. good fun.
Nice one. If it's all right, just to throw things back to kind of your growing up a little
Sure,
bit and
whatever
trace
you need.
through a few things. There's quite a career, so I don't want to,
No, it's been
I don't want to be here for 5 hours.
It's been a long time. Yeah, right.
Yeah. You grew up just outside of Belfast in Northern Ireland during the 70s. It's a logical thing to kind of ask how it was back then with all the political unrest, but I guess that was all you kind of knew at that time, and it was the normal life. You just associated that with growing up.
Yeah, your reality is your reality. You know, if you're born into something and you don't know any different, that's just the way that it is. And that's just the way I thought that, I kind of thought it was that way for everybody. You know, my parents did quite a good job of keeping us sort of sheltered from everything that was going on. But certainly there was, obviously there was British Army was on the streets, there was roadblocks, there was curfews, there was bombs going on. That was all going on. I clearly remember all that. And remembering, every week we would have a bomb scare in school and we'd have to be evacuated and stand in the playground, the pissing rain. And we'd just be laughing about it because we didn't know any. That was part of our life, I never really felt terrified about it. When you're a kid, you have no fear anyway, but that was Northern Ireland at that time, and that's what it was. And I didn't know any different. I didn't know that it didn't have to be like that. And, that we were just completely unique in that situation in the UK of where we were. But I have nothing but really good memories. I certainly don't have, there's a couple of instances where I go, oh, man, that was a bit weird. I remember, walking down the sidewalk one day and a guy had just been shot. And I remember seeing the body and all that when I was a kid. And that was definitely sticks with you. But on the whole, it was as normal a childhood as, I played soccer. I got into music. I hung out with my friends,
Because did you grow up on your family's farm working alongside your dad?
I did. Yeah, I did. Well, I did. Yeah. I'm an only son. So, yeah. So, literally from 10, 11 years old, I started driving tractors and was working on the farm after school and doing all that stuff.
Did you kind of see a more of a peaceful life contrast on that farm compared to what was happening in the cities? Could you see it from that perspective?
Yeah, well, we lived out in the sticks. I was brought up between a town called Newtownards and Belfast. I was kind of in the middle, in the countryside. And Belfast is down at sea level and we were up in the hills. So when a bomb went off, you could really hear it because it resonated up from the valley of Belfast. But yeah, it was our little sort of, the shit was going down in Belfast, in Belfast itself and in the hotspot areas. We were out in the sticks. So that even felt it was miles away, even though it was only 5-6 miles away. But certainly it shapes your culture, being brought up as a Protestant and going to a Protestant-only school when I was there, and have certain things that are ingrained into you, particularly the hardcore Presbyterian religion that was just beaten into you when you were a kid. And then suddenly, for me personally anyway, I suddenly got to an age and went, hang on a minute, why am I learning about English history? Why am I not learning about Irish history? Why am I being taught that, all this, if the Bible's all about love, why am I being taught every day in religious education to have the fear of God put into me? So suddenly I started questioning everything, and that's when everything changed. That's when I started getting into trouble and the wheels came off and it all but sort of went downhill from there. As soon as I started going, but hang on a minute, I don't agree with that. Yeah. That's not right,
And how old would you have been at that point?
13, 14. We moved to Scotland when I was 14. When I moved to Scotland, that was it. I was just like, the wheels kind of came off for me and I was away.
Just on a side note, had that farm been in your family for a while? You've mentioned that the image on your new album, When Life Was Hard and Fast, is a photo.
Yeah, going back to about 100 years, my great-grandfather bought the farm. So that's where the lineage started. So I'd say from the late sort of about 1913, 1914, the farm was in the family.
Because that photo, is it from an Irish TT car crash?
The cover of the new album. It's actually, yeah, it is. It's from the famous Irish TT races. And that is actually a corner of one of the fields on the farm where that crash took place.
When did that photo resurface? Do you know? Has it always been in the family?
I've always been interested in the race because it was such a huge thing. And my dad used to tell me so many stories about it because he could vaguely remember the races when he was a kid. He would have been about 5 or 6, but he could remember because it used to attract 250,000 people towards the races. And he could remember people standing on the fields. My grandfather would rent the field out for people to come and watch the race. And he could remember the kind of carnival atmosphere and how big and how important it was. And so he would sort of tell me a few stories about it. And I started doing some research into it, when we were working on the album and I co-wrote the song with my buddy Sam Robinson, the title track. Sam was very instrumental, and he's great at finding archival stuff. Sam's like a walk-in encyclopedia of Belfast, and he was able to pull up some great pictures, and we were just like, this has got to be the cover and the whole connection, how it ties in with the family, and it was just perfect. It just all fitted together really nicely.
How great is it to complete something? Not only you got your songs, but everything surrounds it as that connection. That makes it extra special.
It's great because everything I write is so personal, and everything I write has a connection to something. And I write a lot about my family and experiences that they've had. So that was lovely to sort of get all the pieces and see part of my family's sort of heritage on the front cover of the album. I mean, I'm really bugs me. I wish my dad was still here to see that, because he would have loved it. But just to think that, I look at that picture and think maybe my dad was standing in that crowd somewhere. Who knows? You know what I mean? But it's just a lovely thought for me to have. To me, your cultural identity and your upbringing is a very important thing. It's something that I've tried to embrace as much as I can.
There's some great songs on that album, man. I was listening to it, and
thank you.
And Robbie Crane played bass on the new album, right?
Yeah, there's no better man.
One of my favorites going back to his Vince Neil days.
Yeah, man, he's got some great stories about that time. I'm telling you, you should get him on the show. He's killer. Robbie is a force of nature. Robbie is a good guy to have around you, because he's so funny for a start. The guy could have a career in stand-up comedy, never mind being a musician. And he's so positive and he's so great. And for that reason alone, never mind his bass playing, I would have him in the studio.
Yeah.
But he's a hell of a musician. I mean, he's a phenomenal bass player. Insane. So Robbie and I are really close. He's always asking me what I'm up to, what's going on. Do you want any help? I'm like, bro, will you come and play bass on this? Yep. What time you want me there? And he just comes in and he kills it. And what I love about Robbie is when you give him a song, he'll go away and he won't come back and go, okay, what do you want me to play? He'll come in and go, okay, here's 4 versions of the song. He'll have worked out 4 different bass versions. Which one do you like? And they'll all be incredible. But he'll come in and he won't just say, well, here's, I'm just playing the root note, I'm just following the chords. He'll have come up with this whole thing that's worked out. And it's incredible working with the guy. I can't say enough good stuff about Robbie Crane. He's brilliant.
Very cool. So am I right? Was it your older sister's record collections that were a big influence on you? Was that kind of one of your first introductions?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, they're a few years older than me, and they were into Bowie and all kinds of stuff. So they were bringing vinyl home, and I was delving into that from quite a young age. And that sort of shaped, I want to say it shaped the first musical sort of foray I had, but it hadn't, because my dad really playing old country records was the first time I was ever aware of music like Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins and Jim Reeves and Patsy Cline. My dad would play those records a weekend with his drinking buddies, and that was my first real taste of music and loving those records. And then when my sister started bringing home the pop and the rock stuff, it just went from there.
Nice. I think you said that obviously Thin Lizzy are a band that I think you actually said they're the soundtrack to your life.
Yeah.
How great to have a band alongside you from such a young age, and then to add even more to that, you're invited to front the band in 2010. How much did you go back and forth with agreeing to accept that position as somebody who loves the band? Was you sold it in a certain way which made you think, yes, I can do this?
I said yes within the first 3 seconds that Scott asked me. I didn't even think about it. Scott called me up, and it wasn't out of the blue, because Scott and I have been friends for a long, long time. Scott actually played on Tattoos and Alibis, my first solo record. And, we keep in touch. And I just thought he was calling me up just to, hey, how's it going? As you do. And literally, we got the pleasantries out of the way. And he went, hey, we're putting Thin Lizzy back together, but we want you to front it. And I went, I'm in. And I mean, literally, I'm in, while shitting myself at the same time. I talked to him. I said, hey, you want me to play bass and sing? Which I kind of really wanted to do, because I love playing bass. And he went, no, I want to, this is my vision for it. I want it to, obviously we're honoring the Lizzy name and the whole legacy, but I want it to be a little bit different than it was before. I want you to be the front man per se and not play the bass, and, because I want to be very respectful to Phil. And, and I listened to what he had to say, and it just made perfect sense. And then, it was only then when I put the phone down, it was like, oh my God,
what did I just agree to?
What have I just fucking agreed to? How the hell am I going to pull this off? Because Phil's like Elvis Presley to me. He is the king. There's nobody, in my eyes, he's the greatest rock and roll frontman in the world. And I suddenly thought, how are you going to do this? What have you just agreed to, Ricky? Fucking idiot. The first person you call, I call my wife, and obviously she was thrilled. And I called a really good buddy of mine, a guy called Del James. Del works a lot with Guns N' Roses. He's their tour manager, has been since day one. Del's a writer too. I've written some songs with Del. He's a couple of novels published. He's here in LA, and he's just a good solid guy, musical nut, but a Thin Lizzy fanatic. And I think if he'd said no, I might have listened to him. But he said, you have to do this and you can do this. And, and as did my wife. And my wife just said, look, you've got rehearsals. If it doesn't feel right or you start second guessing it, you can just say no.
That's a really good point, actually.
Yeah. You can just go, okay, I can't do this. It's not, I don't feel, but I'm not being facetious. Honestly, it's never felt like that for 1 minute. It's always felt okay. And I wasn't up against anybody else. Scott was like, we're going to rehearse in London in 2 months, fly you over, we'll have a rehearsal. I knew it was mine to fuck up. I knew it was mine to lose. I had the gig, but I knew that if the rehearsals didn't go well, they'd have said, well, it's not working out, blah, blah, blah. So, but I went into it with the whole approach, Robin, that, even if it doesn't, I'm still going to get to have played with Brian Downey and Scott Gorham in a room and sung those Thin Lizzy songs. And that's more than I would ever have dreamed about. And I knew I could do it. I knew I could do it justice. I knew I could do it humbly. And as a massive fan myself, I knew how I wanted to portray it and the respect that I had to give it. None of that was lost on me. It's never been a case of me, I'm the lead singer of Thin Lizzy. I'm not the lead singer of Thin Lizzy. Phil Lynott is the lead singer of Thin Lizzy. Phil still is the lead singer of Thin Lizzy. That's all they'll ever be. My position is I get to sing his songs. I get to stand beside in the shadow of the great man and sing his songs with humility and power and passion because they mean everything to me. And that's the way that I approach it. And I want people that never maybe got to see Lizzy back in the day, hear those songs. What musician does not want their songs to live on after they've gone? It doesn't make sense to do a body of art and to work and then go, I don't want anybody to see or hear this when I die. What's the point? I would be honored if somebody would, after I'm long gone, carry on singing my songs and playing my stuff. I would absolutely love it. That's why you want to leave a legacy. So, incredible situation to be in, incredible opportunity. It still is surreal. Even after 10 years now, it's still like, fuck, I can't believe that I get the chance to sing these songs. Just wonderful.
When you got the gig, did any old school friends get in touch and be like, holy shit?
Yeah. I mean, everybody got in touch with me, It was everybody, some people that, I didn't want to get in touch with me, obviously got in touch with me and all that stuff happened. Of course it did. And that was lovely, And again, a good friend of mine said a great thing to me before the first gig. I don't know if this calmed my nerves or not, but it was cool. I'll never forget it. The first gig was in Aberdeen in Scotland. And he said to me, no matter what happens tonight, he said, your life's never going to be the same again tomorrow. And I went, yeah, so even if you fuck this up tonight or you have a great gig, it's going to change your life forever. And it did. It changed everything. It changed everything.
Incredible. Back to first discovering music, once you got those influences from your dad's and then your sister's record collections, was you kind of off and running then, finding your own music, watching Top of the Pops and buying your own albums and just searching out whatever you could?
Yeah, absolutely. That was it. I mean, that was the keys to the candy store and I was gone, and it was listening to stuff, leading you on to other stuff. You hear The Clash and you go, oh, there's this band called The Who, and you start discovering them and then you start listening to some of the early Motown stuff that The Who were influenced by. And suddenly just all this started opening up for me. And I was just like, this is incredible. And it doesn't end.
Isn't Motown quite an influence to you as well?
It's huge. Probably my favorite music of all time.
Is that something that's developed over the years? You just got more and more deep into it? It's always...
It has, yeah. I've got more and more deep into it as I've got older. I've always loved it. I mean, I always was aware of it when I was a kid, of the Temptations and the Four Tops. And
just those melodies.
Detroit Spinners and Martha Reeves. The melodies, the playing, the rhythm section on those songs, the musicianship, the soul and power in the vocals. David Ruffin from the Temptations is probably up there in my top 3 favorite singers of all time. I just was drawn into it. But as years have gone on, I've really got into, I'm really into Northern Soul and like the Chess record label, Stax, all that kind of stuff, just collecting stuff from that and finding all these sort of gems that I've never heard before.
There's almost too much, there is too much stuff out there, isn't there? You could just be consuming it all the time.
It's incredible. It's incredible how much quality stuff was put out back in the day,
But wasn't live music a little tough for you, just due to the political unrest? Not many international bands had come over.
A little bit of a savior for me at that time was moving to Scotland, because when I was really starting to want to go and see bands at the age of sort of 12, 13, yeah, there wasn't that many bands coming to Belfast. But then we moved to Scotland when I was 14, and obviously that wasn't an issue. So then I started going to the Glasgow Apollo to see bands every month, and saw some amazing bands there. And then when the Glasgow Apollo closed down, it became Glasgow Barrowlands. That would be our local venue to go to there. And we were spoiled for choice because everybody played Glasgow.
Wasn't you terrified going into your first Stiff Little Fingers gig?
Yeah, the first of it, the one in Belfast was crazy because I was 13, and Belfast was just really, for us living in the sticks out in the country, it was a no-go area. It was a pretty strict curfew anyway, but it was a no-go area at night, and just sneaking in to see Stiff Little Fingers, at 13, and being in the Ulster Hall surrounded by 2,000 punks off their heads, losing their mind.
Was that one of your first gigs?
That was my first proper gig, and I was exhilarated and terrified at the same time.
I always say it's like watching a horror film. If you're scared by them, it's like,
yeah,
I don't know why I'm terrified, but I want to do it again. It's that kind
exactly,
of thing.
exactly. But that was definitely the show that changed my life. I mean, I walked out of that show going, right, I have to be on that stage doing what those guys are doing, no matter what it takes. That was a defining moment.
Was you fixated on any member?
Jake Burns, I just thought he was such and still is a charismatic frontman, and his voice that he just sang like he'd swallowed, a bag of cement mixed with razor blades. I was just like, how does this do? What's coming out of this guy's voice, and the power and the windmill guitar stuff going on and all. I just thought, this is incredible. How do I get involved in this? What do I need to do? And that was a defining moment, Rob. It really was.
Was that one of the catalysts for picking up the guitar?
Yeah, I mean, I'd made a couple of journeys into it before then on the acoustic guitar, and had 2 or 3 lessons, and I didn't want to play Kumbaya or kind of the gospel stuff that they tended to teach you in the guitar lessons around East Belfast at the time. I was like, this isn't for me, and the fingers hurt, so I put it down. But as soon as I saw Stiff Little Fingers and really felt the power of the electric guitars, I was like, this is what I need to get myself armed with. And I had a paper round delivering the Belfast Telegraph. And the money that I made from working on the farm and living in the paper, and my dad helped me a little bit, I was able to go and buy my first electric guitar.
What happened to that? Do you know?
I wish I did. I wish I still had it, because it's actually wasn't a bad model. It was a Japanese company called Westbury. I see them on eBay now for like 1,500 quid. I bought mine for 150, which was a lot of money back then. But I think I traded it for a Vox guitar. That's what I did, which I don't have anymore either. Still wish I had.
Your family would leave Ireland, was it when you was 14? And
yeah.
You moved to Strathaven in Scotland.
Yeah.
That must have been like a big deal for you on kind of so many levels. It's very kind of formative time for a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
What was your reaction to it, from like leaving friends, starting a new school? Did you find yourself settling in easily?
Back then you didn't get much choice. There was no discussion. It was like, we're moving to Scotland. I think when I asked why, it was like, because we are, I was never really given a reason. And yeah, it sucked because I was happy in Northern Ireland and I had a good circle of friends, and I was getting into music, and I was getting into my first girlfriend and all that kind of stuff. And, to move to the west of Scotland, it just made me laugh, because I think my dad moved us there to maybe try, because he knew maybe try and get a slightly bigger farm for me coming into the farming. I think he moved to get away from the troubles. But if anybody who knows the west of Scotland knows that it's just as bigoted as Northern Ireland when it comes to religion. Thankfully they're not, bombing and shooting at each other, but there's certainly a huge religious thing going on there. And I remember being asked the first day I went to school in Strathaven, the very first question somebody asked me was, I Protestant or a Catholic? And I just thought, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe we've moved and it's the same old shit. And West of Scotland people are tough. They don't take any crap. It was a real eye opener. It wasn't like a cushy move to like a softer, more laid back culture. It was like, Scottish people are fierce. But I think that was good. And I think that was good for me. But yeah, it's a tough age to move. 14 is a tough age to move to another country, to move to another culture. Although Northern Irish people and West of Scotland people are very closely linked by culture and identity, it still was quite a bit of a shock for me.
You would meet 2 future Almighty band members at school, Stump and Floyd.
First day.
Wow, right? They approach you, or did you approach them?
They approached me. Yeah. It was the new kid from Ireland with a funny accent, in the school, and word had got out. I don't know how word had got out. Maybe I'd said something to somebody that I had an electric guitar, and they approached me and, here you got electric guitar. He's got a drum kit. I've got a bass guitar. You want to get together and jam? And, that weekend we're in one of the guys' houses just jamming on songs. And that was it. We were off. And that was 1980.
Cool. So there's a bit of time in between, obviously, from when the Almighty started, because prior to that, you went on tour with New Model Army. What's the, I guess, condensed version of that journey from arriving in Scotland? Was you in a bunch of bands for those first few years? And
it's funny. I was always in a band with Stumpy and Floyd. Stumpy and I fell out quite a few times, and he was in and out of the bands that I was in. And that's Stumpy and I's relationship to this day. Listen, I'm still so tight with Stumpy. He's my brother, and I love him to bits. But we used to fight like cat and dog. And then we'd be best of buddies. The man can make me laugh like nobody else can. But yeah, we always had that. So anyway, long story short, we would change the name every week, and we'd be playing youth clubs and school discos. And then we got to a point where I was about 19 years old, and we were starting to get some interest. The name of the band was Rough Charm, which is a terrible name. But we had some good stuff, and we were 3-piece. And Floyd was on bass and I was on guitar, and we had a different drummer at that time. And we got some interest from New Model Army's record label at the time, who then hooked us up with New Model Army's management, who took an interest in us, wanted to develop the band, gave us some shows opening for New Model Army. Justin Sullivan, singer of New Model Army, knew I was a fan, asked me to get up on stage after our set and play extra guitar on a couple of New Model Army tracks. And they just snowballed from there. Suddenly I got a call. We need an extra guitar player for 12 months. We get a world tour. It's yours.
12 months.
I know, which was amazing, because literally 4 days I'd been on the farm, and there I was, 4 days later, off touring the world.
That must have been crazy, like kind of dropped into the eye of the hurricane. That's got to be nuts.
It was great. It was amazing. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And, I think even then I was astute enough to realize that what a great opportunity, and I'm not going to, fuck this up, and I'm going to learn as much as I can from this, and I'm just soak it all in. And, I knew that I'd been given a great chance to do something that I dreamt about. I've been dreaming about, since I was 13, 14. So yeah, I just grabbed it with both hands and went for it.
Isn't it weird how the whole band industry works on that level? Oh, he's got up on stage and jammed with us. Seems like a good dude. Let's take him on tour for 12 months.
Yeah. I mean, that's it, And I think, again, it's like I've never given up. I was getting the bus from Glasgow to London, the overnight bus from Glasgow with all the nutters of the day, getting dropped off at King's Cross at 6:30 in the morning with £5 in my pocket and our demo tapes, and going round all the record labels in London, and being told it's shit, you're no good, stick to the farm, blah blah blah, all those rejections, and then getting the midnight bus back to Glasgow, getting back into Glasgow, getting the bus back out to Straven, and then going to work in the farm at 7 a.m. in the morning, and haven't slept for 36 hours. I'm doing that a few times. I just, I was never going to give up. And I think you create your own luck. So I've never felt guilty about any of it. I mean, it was tough because I had to turn around to the guys I was in the band with and go, New Model Army have just asked me to join them for a year. So see you.
Yeah.
Which effectively they were like, well, you're a bastard. And yeah, I was, but I was like, I'm sorry, I have to do that. If they'd asked you, you'd have done the same thing, So yeah.
You mentioned the going down to London with demo tapes. I mean, what a contrast to today's world of just emailing those files. It's so important though, and it builds that great work ethic.
It does, because everything required effort back then. Everything was physical. Buying an album was a physical thing. It was getting up, getting the bus, going to the record store, physically buying the album, talking to real people in the record store, hanging out, coming back home, listening to the thing the whole way through. God forbid it takes 45 minutes out of your life. And you just think about everything was physical, and everything required effort, patience and endurance and practice and hard work. It's so easy to cut corners now.
It's like playing endless gigs to no one for like 3 years, but it builds your character.
Yeah. Oh, it does. All it's character building, And now you can just cut so many corners. And that's why there's so much shit stuff out there at the minute, because there's no quality control. There's no quality control anymore. Nobody needs to put the effort into rehearsing or learning an instrument or learning a craft that they did. Not that's not to say that some people don't. There's a lot of kids that do and still have that work ethic. But a lot of people just go, I can be a rock star. I'll just get my phone out and do this little demo in my bedroom and just send it off and auto-tune my voice and pluck the samples off the internet and boom, there you go. Aren't I great?
You'd finish up the New Model Army tour and put the Almighty together. But you guys were like together for less than a year. And is it right? You only played 12 shows before you got the deal with Polydor.
Yeah.
That must have been like, wow. What was the trigger that made everything click, do you think?
We lied a lot.
You cut corners, Ricky. We've just been talking about that. You cut lots of corners.
I think that there was nobody like us. There was nobody the very first show we played was in Glasgow, and there was 12 people there, and we borrowed every Marshall cabinet we could from our mates, crammed them into our cars, drove to the gig. We'd 5 songs. We borrowed dry ice and smoke machines off our mates as well, and we had 2 strobe lights, and we got horrendously drunk, went on stage, dry ice, smoke everywhere, the strobes on for the whole fucking gig, and played like we were playing Wembley Stadium. And a guy from Kerrang magazine was there called Richard Heggie. And he went, I think I've just seen the greatest. He said, I think I've just seen the greatest rock and roll show I've ever seen in my life, and gave it a 5-star review.
5Ks.
5Ks. First gig. The next day, the phone starts ringing from record labels.
Wow.
And we had managed, but we were being managed by New Metal Arms people at that time. So our manager was great and played it cool. But Polydor really started, who we eventually signed to, really started courting us from day one. Kept an eye on us and were sort of coaching us along, and as the songs developed and giving us demo money and all that kind of stuff. But our whole philosophy was, there was nobody like us. We looked and sounded different than anybody else, and we used to laugh about it. We'd come down from Scotland in the van, we'd play the marquee, get drunk, get in a couple of fights, blow the roof off the marquee, and then fuck off back to Scotland. We wouldn't hang about, we wouldn't go to the league of clubs, we wouldn't play the game.
People are like, what was that?
What was that? Who are these guys? What just happened? It was like a fucking Viking raid, And it really, really worked in our favor. It really got all the magazines started talking about us, and the hype really blew up to an incredible degree, to the point where the band formed in January 88. January 89, we're playing the marquee, and there's like 30 record labels there, and we've got to the point where the next day, I remember sitting in the management office and going, who do you want to sign with? Here's all the offers. And we went with Polydor for a number of reasons. Me personally, because I'd always liked the red Polydor label on the records at the Who and Hendrix and the Jam,
Good
and
thinking.
and all that. I'd always thought that looked fucking great. So that was purely, money didn't really matter to me.
Very romanticized, that is.
Exactly. The fact that they'd been with us from the start and we built up a relationship with the people there swung it for us for them. February 89.
Nice.
12 shows.
Just to wind things back just a little bit, just made me thinking, when you came back from that New Model Army tour, how had that changed you as a performer? And did your other bandmates think, holy shit, now we've got to come up to this level?
I don't know. I was extremely driven because I'd had the whole concept of the Almighty. I mean, I knew my time in New Model Army was going to come to an end because they were going to go in and work on a new album. And in fairness, they said, once the album's done, will you come back and go on the road with us again? And I went, much as New Model Army were one of my favorite bands, much as it was killing me to go, yeah, of course I will. I had the idea of the Almighty and the concept, and I wanted to be a frontman again. I just went, no, I want to go off and do this thing. I've got to try this. And I'd learned so much from that world tour. I learned so much about stagecraft, songwriting, the industry, just how to work a crowd, the whole thing. And I had a lot of confidence. And I think that I just was like, with the Almighty, when we got back to Scotland, I called up Stump Floyd and I said, you've every right to tell me to fuck off, but here's my ideas for this band. And they heard me out and they went, right, we're in. And, I had it so planned out and together, nothing was left to chance. Like that first gig I explained to you about, I knew what we were going to do. I knew we were going to get all those marshals and blah, blah, blah. So it was all premeditated. Very, very driven, very focused, and everything just kind of went according to plan, which was great.
Sometimes once you got that clear vision, perhaps makes things more, not easier, but...
I think it does, and it was just, this is how it's going to be, and this is what we've got to look like and sound like, and, we're not going to do that many gigs. We're not going to play like, every club under the sun. Every gig is going to be an experience or something special. And, thankfully it worked for us.
Awesome, man. And then you'd head into Abbey Road to record.
I know, right? Yeah.
How was that? Are you a Beatles fan at all? Was there any
I was, yeah. I mean, because we were in Studio 2 as well, which is where the Beatles did all their stuff. So that was... it was surreal. I mean, I think we signed in February, and then in April 89, we're in Abbey Road Studio 2, surrounded by £25,000 worth of new equipment that Polydor had just given us. We had the luxury of going into this store was called Sound Control in Jamaica Street in Glasgow, and literally going in going, I want that, and I want that. And, that was just the feeling of being able to do that for years. Of going into record shops and going, one day, if I have enough money, I'll be able to buy that Les Paul. It was incredible, but we were in Abbey Road Studio 2, surrounded with all this fucking equipment. I think it took me 2 days how to work out how to turn my amp on. You know what I mean?
I've got one, but how do you work it?
We were so naive and so just, what do we do now, But what an incredible buzz being in that studio, in that room.
Mad. And again, like we said earlier, you're doing those trips down to London to shop the demo. You had this huge legendary studio experience, and now people are just recording the albums on the computers at home. Everything's just flipped on its head. It's nuts.
I know.
How did you record the new record? Was you all in a room together?
The solo record? Yeah. My recording process really hasn't changed that much in 30 years. It's still very similar to how we made the first Almighty record. I'm still a big believer in going into the studio with a band. And I don't care what people say, no matter how great technology gets, it'll never replace human soul and human spirit. It will never replace it. So that being said, so it's not really changed for me. So yeah, well, Keith Nelson, who produced it with me, we put a core band together, which was myself, Keith, Robbie Crane on bass, and Xavier Muriel, ex-Buck Cherry on drums. And we recorded the backing tracks as a band. And, we'll keep the bass and drums. And then Keith and I took the bass and drum tracks away. And, for the next week or two, we worked on the guitars and the vocals and all that stuff. And again, no different to how I've recorded any of my records.
I mean, that is proper old school. Get the bass and drums down.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm all for technology. Don't get me wrong. Pro Tools is great when it comes to editing and splicing. The fact you don't have to have somebody that's got a steady hand to splice a tape now, and one false move could ruin the track forever. It's great for that. I mean, it's great to be able for me to pick up the phone to one of my buddies and say, hey, can you play a guitar solo? And they're in the UK and they can just email the guitar solo over. That's great. But everything else about it is as organic and live as it can be.
Nice. I say it's a great sounding album, man, and I wish you all the success with
Thank
it.
you.
Ricky, I've loved chatting with you, mate. It's been great. I appreciate your time.
Nice one, Rob.
What a top bloke. Thanks to Ricky Warwick for taking some time to chat with me recently and sharing such great stories. For more information, please head on over to rickywarwick.com for info on his latest and really great album, When Life Was Hard and Fast, which is out now. We're almost at episode 100 of this show and coming up on our first birthday. That milestone episode is already in the can and it's a super fun one which I can't wait to share. And you know what? It really captures what I set out to do when I first started this show. In the meantime though, please visit stvpod.com for all earlier episodes. Also there you'll find links to straight to video music, videos, merch and a support page too if you'd like to get involved in the show that little bit extra. But to be honest, I really appreciate you listening and for all the great comments and sharing the show to other people who you think would enjoy it. So that's all for this episode. Really do hope you're all doing okay. Maybe I'll get to see some of you in the near future, but in the meantime, look after yourselves and let's do this again soon.